Welcome to the Ember Knights weapons tier list video and weapon mods tier lists. I'm Quirky Turtle, and I'll be going over pretty much everything to do with weapons, all our mods, whether they're good or bad or indifferent. The format of this video is I'm going to put up one of the weapons onto the main tier list, and then I'm going to go over their weapon mods and put them on a separate tier list. Yeah, let's jump right into it. So first things first, we gotta start with the Ember Blade. It's the first weapon you unlock, and to me, it's a pretty solid weapon. I'm going to put it in A tier because I feel like there's a lot of avenues you can take the Ember Blade. For example, there's a mod that gives you the capability to burn enemies or burn food when you're above a certain threshold of health, which is very useful, especially since when you burn food, you cook it initially, and then if you do it again, you'll overcook it and burn it, but you can cook food with burn, so it's a good utility. And then also, the weapon itself has good capabilities of scaling damage. So, personally, I think it's A tier. And it's like a starter weapon, so you kind of get used to it early on. And then it just feels good. Moving on to the Ember Blade's mods. There's 9 mods for every weapon. And then there's 3 rows of 3 mods. And you can choose 1 mod per row. And that leaves quite a few combinations. Not a lot, really. There's usually some good mods in that row and some bad mods in the row. So first mod that you'll see is Honed. And Honed gives your third attack 25% crits, which really isn't that good. I feel like that's like the middle, like the absolute middle, just for the simple fact that you have to third attack, right? And third attacking in itself is not difficult. It's just when you get into like higher difficulties or like more enemies or the enemies move faster or attack faster, it's kind of hard to get in that third attack sometimes. And 25% crits isn't necessarily that useful. Obviously, this depends on the build that you're going. Like if you're doing a crit build, sure, 25% crit is great. But in a lot of builds, it's just an extra way to gain a little bit more damage on, I guess, 1 hit every 3 hits. So that's why I put it in B tier. It's just, there's some good uses for it, but it seems really situational in my opinion. And there's also just better mods in that row. So this is the first row, first mod. Moving on to the first row, second mod is Spark. Now, Spark is pretty insane. This is the mod I was alluding to earlier on. And whenever you are above 75% HP, your weapon attacks add burn. So this means you can build a burn build. The only caveat is if you do go below 75% HP, you no longer burn with your weapon attacks. So you gotta stay healthy in this build, but it's pretty good. Overall, I think this is one of the best mods for Ember Blade. It's just really strong in my opinion. Moving on to Stagger, which is the first row third mod. Your first weapon hits on an enemy has a 10% chance to stun. I don't think I've ever used this. I really do not think I've ever used this. It's just not good. I don't think stun is that important in a lot of runs. It's a very situational thing. And the fact that it's only your first hit on an enemy is pretty bad. So that's why I'm putting it in F tier. I feel like the cause of it, which is your first weapon hit on an enemy, and then the percent chance to stun, is also just, it doesn't work, right? Your first hit on an enemy, you're either going to kill the enemy or not do a lot of damage to that enemy, right? There's hardly ever where you have to stun that enemy on first weapon attack. And even then, if you do, this mod doesn't really help, because it's still a 1 in 10 chance to stun them, which is not good at all. So I think it's a useless mod. That's why I'm throwing it F tier for now. It could change, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be the only one seeing an F tier, or one of the ones seeing an F tier. Yeah, let's move on to the second row mods, which the first mod in the second row is Flurry. Gain a charge attack where you unleash a flurry of rapid attacks. This is A tier for the single reason that you have a lot of hits on an enemy. Now, your damage does get reduced per hit, because otherwise it would be really crazy. However, since it's more hits, there's more chances to proc things like lightning, right? Or proc crits, or maybe burn an enemy, or poison an enemy, right? There's a lot of different ways you can use this. Your move speed does get reduced a lot, but you can move while doing this. Also, when you end the flurry, I'm pretty sure there's a jab at the end. Now, I haven't used the flurry mod in a while, but that jab at the end does do increased damage, I believe, and then it also propels you forward. So there's definitely some movement tech you could do with it. You can also roll cancel out of the charge attack. There's some good things, some cool things that you can do with Flurry. That's why overall I think it is an A tier weapon mod. Whirlwind is the second row, second mod. Your dash attack becomes a short range spin attack. That's another A tier weapon mod. It basically just makes your dash attack what your dash attack normally would be, is like a jab, right? You just dash and jab forward. And that does pretty good damage. But now that it's a spin attack, you now have an AoE short range attack. It pairs really well with just doing a lot of attacks and just kind of like spamming your attack, sort of. It's also good for speedrunning with Ember Blade, so that's where it kind of gets, raised a little bit for me, because I am a speedrunner at heart. But yeah, overall, I think Whirlwind is a pretty solid weapon mod, and definitely is good with Flurry, or not like with Flurry, but like Flurry and Whirlwind are two great mods on the same row, which is very tragic because we can't use multiple mods for the same row. The last mod on the second row is Lunge. Gain a charge attack where you strike forward through all enemies. It used to be S tier, and now it's somewhere about here. I'd say it's more useful than Stagger, but it's so bad. Actually, maybe it's just D tier, but it's just like, it could be so much better. It's good, don't get me wrong. It does exactly what it says it does. It's just like, the other mods in the row are so much better, right? Because the other mods in the row, it's Flurry and Whirlwind. And you can only choose one, right? You're never going to choose Lunge, or at least I've never chosen Lunge over it. Maybe I'm not seeing something with Lunge, but Lunge does not seem good enough for me. So I gotta just like never take Lunge. I don't suggest taking it. You can try it, but I don't suggest taking it. I don't think it's the best one. I don't even think it's a choice or a good option at all. That's why I'm throwing it in D tier, as you can see. So moving on to the last row. The first mod is Momentum. Arguably one of the best mods for the weapon as well. Whenever you defeat an enemy with your weapon, or with your Ember Blade, gain 5% bonus damage. Bonus resets when you take damage. Max 15 stacks. So if you continuously kill enemies and not get hit, you can gain bonus damage up to 75% bonus damage, which is quite nice, and that's very significant in some scenarios. So I think it gives Spark a run for its money, honestly. I think these two are like hand in hand. Obviously, both of them are pretty situational, because if you want to go like a burn build, take Spark, right? Both of them kind of require you to not take damage in order for it to work. However, Momentum, that 75% bonus weapon damage, is insane. It's a very significant increase. And Spark is sort of only good with a burn build, so maybe I'll move down Spark and leave Momentum at the top, because it fits into like any build you're running with Ember Blade. However, Spark is more for only burn. So yeah, I think that makes sense. Now moving on to the last row, second mod, which is Smite. Whenever you stun an enemy, your next attack will unleash a lightning bolt. Good in a lightning build, but I don't think it's good, because honestly, you have to stun an enemy. Chances of you stunning an enemy are pretty slim if your build is going really well, because you're most likely just going to kill the enemy before you stun them. And even if you do stun them, one lightning bolt isn't necessarily enough to make it worth taking, because once again, it's in the same row as Momentum. You can't get any better than Momentum, really. So I'm throwing it C tier. It's a mediocre weapon mod, and even if I was running a lightning build, I would still question whether it's good or not to take. So C tier for it. So the last row, last weapon mod for Ember Blade is Pyro Strike. Whenever you crit an enemy, you also burn that enemy. So this works hand in hand with Spark, because it's just more burn, and then it's also another instance of burn. It's not even the same burn tick, right? It's a different instance. So Combustion Stone will proc twice because you're applying burn twice, right? If you do pair these two mods together. The only downside, which is why it's in B tier, is because you have to crit, right? Whenever you crit an enemy. Critting an enemy is pretty hard to do early game, and then mid game, you usually get like 50% crits, or like that's even still late game, sort of. That's probably like A3, A4, you'll start to get around 40 to 50% crits. And that's when the build with Pyro Strike will probably start to pop off, but by that point, it's kind of still too slow. Yeah, I think it's in B tier. Probably in front of Honed, just for the simple fact that burn builds are quite strong, and crit by itself isn't super strong. So yeah, I think that's fine. And then the ultimate mod, which once again, not really a downside by any means, but could be a downside. Your third attack is a spin attack. Now, I like the spin attack. However, it can be annoying at times. So you just gotta play with it, see if you like it or not. I do think the third attack being a spin attack, which is an AoE attack, for lack of better words, is better than just the default attack, or sword swipe, I guess you would call it. I'm thinking it doesn't really change the weapon that much, but it does make it better. So I don't think it's S tier, but I don't know if it's A tier either. I think it's just middle of the pack because it doesn't necessarily really change all that much. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it B tier. And that's the Ember Blade weapon mods all done. So just to recap, the Ember Blade weapon mods. In S tier we have Momentum. In A tier we have Spark, Flurry, and Whirlwind. In B tier we have Pyro Strike, Honed, and Spin Attack, the ultimate mod. In C tier, we have Smite. In D tier, we have Lunge. And in F tier, we have Stagger. Alright, so Guardian Bow. Where should we put the Guardian Bow? I think Guardian Bow is a very, very good example of the absolute middle of the pack. Now, you have to remember, this is my opinion, and my opinion alone. I know a lot of people like the bow. The bow is great. I'm not saying the bow is bad here. I'm just saying there is definitely better weapons, is what I'm trying to get at. And the bow is good at what it does, right? It's a ranged attack. The only downside that I can really see is the fact that its damage is quite low. However, the weapon mods kind of pick that up. Overall, I really do think it's a B tier weapon. Guardian Bow weapon mods. Starting with Rapid Shot here. Rapid Shot makes your third attack rapidly shoot 2 arrows. I believe this is automatically equipped when you unlock the weapon, and I don't like it. I'm just gonna go out there and say it. I don't like it. I really don't like it. It throws off my timing whenever I use like the quick attacks, right? The third attack makes you kind of like, not necessarily animation locked, but kind of animation locked for like an extra half second. And that little bit of time is not usually a big deal, but can be. And that's why I don't really like it, just for that little detail. But then again, there's just better weapon mods in that row. So this is the top row, first weapon mod. The next weapon mod is Spread Shot, which is, once again, the top row, second weapon mod. Your third attack shoots a spread of 5 arrows. Now this one's really good. This one is good in many, many builds. So therefore it's going to be an A tier, but not S tier, because it's not like objectively the best. So S or A tier for Spread Shot. Now, the fact that your third attack shoots 5 arrows, which makes it a shotgun, right? That's 5 procs on a boss or 5 procs on an enemy if you like, be in that enemy's face and basically hit all the arrows. Otherwise, it's just good AoE clear, or possible AoE clear, I guess. Anyways, it's a spread of 5 arrows. That's 5 procs, or 5 possible procs, 5 hits, right? So you can proc, I don't know, maybe you're running a burn build, so it's combustion stones, right? Or maybe you're running a poison build, so toxic mangles, right? So you just apply more poison per arrow. Each arrow will apply whatever effect your normal arrows apply. So you're just getting 5x on that third attack, really. Which is why I think it's an A tier and not B tier. And that's also why I think Rapid Shot is in B tier and not A tier. Just because Spread Shot is so much better. It just does more. Getting to the last weapon mod on the top row is Opportunist. Your charge attacks deal 10% bonus damage to enemies afflicted by a status ailment. Now, I originally thought this was really good because I was like, oh, I'm always going to be charge attacking, right? It just makes sense. And usually you'll have status ailments. But realistically, since the bow does so little damage, I think it's in D tier. I actually think it's in D tier. It's just that bad. It could even be F tier because I don't know anybody who uses it. But I'll be conservative for now and throw it in D tier just in case you are somebody who uses it. Yeah, I don't like it. I really don't like it. 10% bonus damage doesn't seem to be enough. Plus, it's in the same row as Spread Shot. Like, how am I going to take Opportunist over Spread Shot? Even if you usually charge your attacks, I think Spread Shot is still objectively better. For, that, like, 1 or 2 times throughout the run that you actually use it. You'll get more benefit out of it than Opportunist, I feel like. But then I could just be wrong. I don't know. That's how I feel. Starting with the second row here. Ricochet. It's the first weapon mod in that second row. Your charge attacks will ricochet to additional enemies. I love this weapon mod. I really do. It could objectively be the best one, but I'm going to play a little bit conservative here and just go A tier, right? I think it's a great weapon mod, and I also think it's an amazing designed weapon mod. It's a super fun one too, right? Being able to ricochet an arrow off of multiple enemies, like 6 enemies, I think is it's total. Maybe it's 5. Like that arrow just ping, 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 right? Hits 5 or 6 enemies, I'm pretty sure. And that arrow will, apply poison, apply burn, apply any effects that your normal arrows would apply. Overall, I think Ricochet is a great designed weapon mod and probably the best one in that row. I mean, there is some other ones as well that are pretty good. Actually, all the weapon mods in this row are pretty solid now that I'm looking at them. It's pretty solid. So moving on to the second row, second mod is Volley. This used to be my favorite, and it's still really good, but I feel like it's ever so slightly behind Ricochet, just for the simple fact that it's not, OP anymore. So Volley, your charge attack releases an arrow volley at the target location that slows enemies. This was quite strong back in the day, back in like 1.0 to actually before 1.0, but nowadays it's just not. It's not up to the standard that it used to be. It's still good. It's just there's some better ones now, better weapon mods in this row. So moving on to the last weapon mod in the second row is Perfectionist. Chaining a perfect charge attack adds an additional arrow. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know too much about this mod, I'm gonna be honest. I'm pretty sure it's better than Rapid Shot, which I think Rapid Shot's just gonna go down a tier. It's not even on the same playing field as these ones. Like, nowhere near. Perfectionist, I haven't used enough to truly know. However, from what I have seen and how I have used it, it seems like it's a pretty solid weapon mod. Just probably not the best in the row. I feel like Ricochet and Volley are just the better ones in this row. Now, I could be wrong. There is some broken combos with Perfectionist, such as, well, Perfectionist and one of the next mods, which is Explosive Arrows. It's a pretty good combo. It does quite a lot. That's just, I don't know. I feel like it's not as good as Ricochet or Volley, so I'm going to throw it there. Starting with the last row now, and the first mod, Mark Shot. Your third attack marks an enemy, increasing damage dealt to them, which is actually kind of good. It also increases the damage of certain relics. I don't know if it's supposed to or not, but it does. So I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure where to put it because it's not a great weapon mod overall. It's an interesting one. It's just not great. It's definitely better than Rapid Shot, but I don't think it's better than Perfectionist. Yeah, I feel like it's just going to sit in C tier for now. Maybe it'll get moved. I don't know. Explosive Arrows. The second mod on the last row. Your charge attacks explode. This is a really cool one. I'm going to put it next to Perfectionist because that's a really good combo there. Perfectionist plus Explosive Arrows. It stuns and it doesn't do as much damage as it would normally do because Explosive Arrows, for some reason, I'm pretty sure it reduces the damage per arrow for some reason. I'm not 100% sure. But there's more stun chance or more stun applied to enemies with Explosive Arrows, which is really nice. But yeah, this is a really good combo here. Perfectionist and Explosive Arrows. You should definitely try it out. The last weapon mod on the last row is Invigorate. Whenever you defeat an enemy, increase your attack speed by 20% for 3 seconds. This is an interesting one. It's a really interesting one. It's good, but how good, right? Like, that's the question. I'm not 100% sure. This is like another one that I'm just not 100% sure on. Like, it feels good to use, but if you have multiple effects going, like Invigorate has a visual effect to show you that it's active, right? But if you have empowered arrows, it makes it really hard to see which effect you have active. And from what I can see, Invigorate's good, but it's still not OP by any means. So I'm just going to keep it in C tier. It's on the same tier as Mark Shot for sure. These two weapon mods are interchangeable in a way. Like, both of them aren't cracked out by any means. Anyways, the ultimate mod for the Guardian Bow is actually really good. I never used to like it, and then maybe they adjusted something or something. Something happened, possibly. I don't know. The way it currently is, which is perfect weapon attacks, empower your next 3 chain attacks, dealing 50% increased damage. It's also not like a timed thing, right? It's just whenever you perfect a weapon attack, your next 3 chain attacks deal increased damage, right? 50% increased damage to be exact. And that makes this build really good. It utilizes the charger attacks and then chain your attacks thing. So like quick attacks and charge attacks, right? One is slow charging, one is fast, right? It pairs the two together really well. And since this is an ultimate mod, there's no choice to like, take it or not take it because there's something better than it. It's just a standalone upgrade or mod. So you can always have it on, or you can turn it off if you don't want it, but I don't see why you would. I think empowered arrows is always good in any scenario. It's just more damage, really. Anyways, that is all for the Guardian Bow. Let me just quickly go over what's in what tier. So in S tier, we have empowered arrows, the ultimate mod. In A tier, we have spread shots and ricochet. In B tier, we have volley, perfectionist, and explosive arrows. In C tier, we have mark shots and invigorate. In D tier, we have rapid shots. In F tier, we have opportunist. The Nexal Staff currently is an S tier weapon. If you're asking yourself why would you say that? Well, then I guess you've probably not played the game recently. If you really, and I mean like really are asking why, I don't know how to say this to you, but it's just objectively the best weapon currently. Since skills are so incredibly strong currently, there is no better weapon. The staff utilizes skills way better than any other weapon, and skills are just the best. They are the meta. So you gotta just play with it, try it out. Once you play with it, you'll probably never go back to another weapon unless the skills get drastically changed or they drastically buff like weapon damage and things like that. Like, I really don't know. I've been using the staff for like the past year, and it's really strong. It was strong before the skills mastery update, and now it's even stronger. So let's take a look at those weapon mods. The first weapon mod on the first row for the Nexal Staff is Luminescent. Increase your damage by 5, and your attacks can hit an additional enemy. Now, this is good. Like, it's a good weapon mod. Just in the current meta, the current, skills being busted, this does pretty much nothing for you. So we're just going to throw in B tier. We probably will move it around a little bit, but we're just going to throw in B tier to start it off with. And then the next one is the worst weapon mod I've ever seen. They need to change this. Absolutely need to change this. So on the first row, second weapon mod is Overflow. Your charge attack damages in a circle instead of a cone. This is terrible. This is actually terrible. You know why? Because this charge attack, right? You hold the charge attack, or you hold the attack button down, left click, and it pulls up a circle. That circle's radius or range is shorter than the cone's range. So you don't gain any extra damage or any extra range. In fact, you lose range. And it's like a circle. So now you can't even control what enemies you're hitting. It's just randomly hitting an enemy in a small circle around you. Like, it's not good. You have no control, really. And you lose out on range. In my opinion, it's absolutely terrible. Terrible. Yeah, it's going to be in F tier, and it'll stay there. I'm sure of it. There's no way. They have to rework the entire weapon mod of Overflow. It's just that bad. Anyways, moving past that abysmal weapon mod, we're going to go to Magic Orbs, which is, once again, the top row last or third weapon mod. It's interesting because this weapon mod's really strong, but I don't know if it's S tier strong, I'm going to throw it in A tier for now. Magic Orb. Shoot 2 Seeking Orbs that deal skill damage whenever you refresh a skill. It makes on refresh things better, I guess, or like having a higher refresh. Plus, if you're running a skill build, you're going to have to refresh those skills some way, somehow, right? When you do refresh those skills, you're going to shoot out 2 Seeking Orbs that deal, I believe it's either 10 skill damage or it's 15 skill damage. I cannot quite remember. I do know it's quite significant, so it is extra damage whenever you do refresh a skill, and I'm 99% sure that those Seeking Orbs will also refresh one. Basically what I'm getting at here is if you refresh a skill, it'll shoot out these 2 Seeking Orbs, and those 2 Seeking Orbs will give you 2 refresh back when they hit an enemy, that is. Yeah, maybe it is an A tier. I don't think I can move it up to S tier. I don't think it's quite S tier material, so we're going to throw it in A tier and move on here. Starting the second row of weapon mods off is Spell Siphon. Defeating an enemy with your charge attack increases the skill damage of your next skill use by 10% per enemy defeated. I don't really know how I feel about this. Like, honestly, I used it twice ever, I'm pretty sure. Both times I was doing a run where I was only using my charge attacks to increase my skill damage by as much as possible so I can one-shot practice. And it did work, but it was absolutely miserable. Like, that run was absolutely miserable from like A3 to end of A5, right? It was miserable because obviously staff isn't the weapon you want to, deal a lot of damage with. By itself, like just normal attacks. It's not the weapon you want. I think it's C tier. It's just like, it can be useful, but I don't think it is, right? Like, on average, I don't think you get more use out of this than the other weapon mods in this row. Speaking of which, the next one is Focus. The number of hits to refresh your skills is reduced by 2. So this is basically like getting a chronograph off rip, and it's quite strong, right? It reduces the refresh of your skills by 2. And in this current meta, as you all know, skills are everything. So being able to refresh skills quite a bit faster, it's a lot, right? It's very significant. Also, speaking of which, we're going to move down Luminescence and move down Spell Siphon here, just because I don't think Focus is on the same level as Luminescence. Although, actually, no. Okay, we're going to move it back. I think it is. It's just like different builds. And in this current meta, Luminescence, this is actually a hard decision because on one hand, I'm talking about the current meta being skills only, basically. And that is 100% right. It's just, does that mean that anything that increases your weapon damage and like weapon builds, does that mean like those are just bad right now? Like it does. So that's why I feel like Luminescence is actually lower. But I do feel like Luminescence and Spell Siphon are on the same line or same tier. So I think that's good. To close out the second row weapon mods, we have Auto Orbs, which your third attack releases 2 Seeking Orbs that deal skill damage. Once again, these will refresh your skills when they hit an enemy, and I believe they also do 10 to 15 skill damage. I'm not 100% sure on that exact number, but it is quite significant. So I feel like it's on the same level as Magic Orbs. Although, since it's in the same row as Focus, so you have to choose either Focus or Auto Orbs, it really depends on the build. And once again, I'm going to reiterate again, skills are meta. So in a skill build, you're not going to attack very often, or you're going to charge attack so you can, refresh faster. Yeah, I don't know. I think Auto Orbs deserves B tier. It's a solid weapon mod. Moving on to the last row is a very, very interesting mod in the first slot, that is. So Imbuement. Whenever you use a skill, your weapon gains 5 skill damage. So this is a great way to make your actual weapon attacks deal a lot of damage, because you're going to be scaling skill damage with staff. So whenever you use a skill, your weapon gains 5 skill damage. It's very strong. It really is strong. But I have to throw it on the same row as these ones, as Luminescence and Spell Siphon, for the simple fact that, it is a skill meta, so you're probably not going to be taking Imbuement. As cool as it is, and as good as it seems, it's just not better than the next two. Which the next one is Wisdom, bottom row, middle mod. Skills equipped in your first slot gain an additional charge. This is quite strong. Be able to have an extra charge on your first slot skill. Be able to have another charge of a chakra or a nice charge or something that like really benefits by having another charge is awfully good. And once again, skill meta. So the more skill charges you have, the more skills you can use, right? It all makes sense. The last mod for the weapon Nexal Staff is Clairvoyance, right? Your first skill use in each room is free. I feel like this is S tier. I really do. Especially with the addition of Yele Barrage, the new skill, right? That new skill is really, really strong. The only downside is it's hard to refresh it because there's no way for you to make the skill refresh itself, which makes Clairvoyance really strong. If you can clear a room with 1 Yele Barrage charge, then Clairvoyance is insane, right? So you just get a free skill charge every single room, which is very, very nice. And that's why I think it's S tier. I use it in pretty much any build I ever run with Staff. So S tier, right? With the ultimate mod, Arcane Mastery, which upgrades Arcane Orbs, which is the default skill you get on Staff, to Quasar Orbs, which is just an upgrade version of Arcane Orbs. They share the same, skill upgrades and things like that, or very similar skill upgrades, I guess. I think it's just A tier. I think it's A tier. There is no downside. Like, you would always take it, but it doesn't necessarily break the build. I don't know. Maybe it's perfectly set here in S tier. Maybe that's just good. Anyways, looking over this weapon mods tier list for the Nexal Staff seems pretty solid. So let's reiterate. In S tier, we have Clairvoyance and Arcane Mastery, the ultimate mod. In A tier, we have Magic Orbs and Wisdom. In B tier, we have Focus and Auto Orbs. In C tier, we have Imbuement, Luminescence, and Spell Siphon. In D tier, we have Nothing. And in F tier, we have Overflow. Alright, so the next weapon is the Rift Hammer. Rift Hammer has become a really fun weapon for me, especially over the last, 3 to 4 months, probably. It's just a really interesting weapon. I don't usually like melee weapons, for example, but this one feels good. This one's been feeling really good recently, and it's my go-to weapon if I'm not using the staff, so honestly, I think it's ever so slightly before Ember Blade now. Alright, let's check out their weapon mod. The Rift Hammer's weapon mods are all pretty solid overall, so starting with the top row, we have Heavy Blow as the first mod. Your first weapon hit on an enemy deals 10% to your max HP as damage. This is a very interesting mod because the Rift Hammer has an interaction with apples, where when you smack it, you make applesauce, and then it gives you 3 max HP instead of healing you. Overall, I think I'm just going to throw Heavy Blow in B tier because it's kind of good. Early on, it's not great because you're going to be dealing 8 damage, maybe. Like 5 to 10 damage is usually how much damage you're going to deal in A1. So it's not significant. However, once you start to gain, a lot of max HP and you start hitting 200 to 300 max health in the end game, that's 20 to 30 bonus damage on your first hit. And that's pretty significant overall. So I think it's a good B tier weapon mod. Yeah, we'll leave it there for now. The next one is Defensive Stance. You gain 35% damage reduction while charging. Honestly, it's an S tier thing. Take less damage while charging the weapon, and you should always be charging your attacks. So theoretically, you should never get hit while you're not charging, which means you're gonna basically just have 35% damage reduction permanently. So seems pretty cracked, I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely one of my go-to mods for sure on the top row. In fact, I think it is the mod that I solely run. I don't think I've used any of the other ones, or not to any significant degree. Definitely think Defensive Stance is an S tier weapon mod. Now, the last weapon mod on the top row here is Knockout. Whenever you use a skill, your next attack conjures a blast that stuns. I don't like things that stun. I really don't. Stun is just a worse freeze, in my opinion, which is pretty objective, to be honest. So that's why I'm throwing it in C tier for now. It's just it's not enough, And you have to use a skill, and then your next attack conjures a blast that stuns. What if you miss that attack, then you just get no value? I don't know, I see a lot of downsides with it. Starting off the second row of weapon mods for the Rift Hammer is Unstable Rift. Your third charge attack knocks up and stuns enemies. Once again, it's a stunning thing. I would argue that this is better than Knockouts. So Unstable Rift is okay. It's not great. I'm going to throw in C tier once again because it's better than Knockout, but worse than Heavy Blow probably. Although they're not really comparable, I guess. Anyways, I'm not a huge fan of Unstable Rift. Is what I'm trying to get at. So C tier. The next weapon mod, which is on the second row, second slot, is Combat Slam. When charged, your third attack becomes a leap attack. This is a very interesting one. It's had many iterations. Personally, I don't use it, and I don't think it's all that great, but it's a very cool weapon mod. Therefore, I'm going to throw in B tier just before Heavy Blow, because I do think it's pretty useful, and can be useful. It's just, I think there's a better one. So on the last slot on the second row is Volcanic Rift. Your third charge attack leaves a trail of fire. That is actually probably the S tier. So I pulled Defensive Stance down to A tier because it's good but not insane. Volcanic Rift allows your third charge attack to burn, right? And it's a lot of instances of burn, or a lot of ticks of burn. So therefore, if you have a Combustion Stone, that is a lot of damage. You've probably seen me, run a build or two with it. It's quite strong. Overall, it's the build I take. Whenever I run Rift Hammer, I use Volcanic Rift, which is the second row, third mod, and just run a burn build. It's insane amount of damage, like, over time, although it's not a lot of time. Like, the ticks are really fast on the Volcanic Rift Fire Trail, so you can burn an enemy a lot of times in a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, right? And there's also something called 1-3 Hammer Tech, which is where you attack once, like attack twice, but then cancel out of it, like roll cancel out of it really fast, and then charge your third attack, and then do that attack. So you can use the third attack faster, which also makes this Volcanic Rift mod really, really crazy. Yeah, I think that's enough to say about it. It's just great. It, gives you element, status element, which is burn or fire, and then you can run a fire build with Rift Hammer, and it's a really crazy strong fire build. Starting the bottom row of weapon mods off for the Rift Hammer is Safeguard. Whenever you defeat an enemy, gain 2 armor and reduces incoming damage by 1. Max 15 stacks. This is a really good one as well. It's kind of worded a little bit weird. I feel like there should be maybe a comma after armor or something, because it's like whenever you defeat an enemy, gain 2 armor. Armor reduces incoming damage by 1. Maybe they should just take the reduces incoming damage by 1, because armor is just like basically a regenerable health pool, right? With a certain set max. And it'll just, each armor stack will take 1 damage for you when you get hit. Maybe I'm wording it wrong too now, or maybe I'm wording it inefficiently, but point being, Safeguard is just a way better bone plate. It is just a twice as good bone plates, and you can get it right off the rip, which is quite nice. I do think it's one of the best mods on the bottom row for Rift Hammer. Moving on to the next one, which is Battle Rhythm, which is once again the bottom row second slot weapon mod. Whenever you defeat an enemy, gain an orbiting hammer. Your third attack, launches the hammers forward. This is interesting, right? This is kind of strong. I feel like it's better than Combat Slam. I don't know if it's quite as good as Safeguard, but it's quite good. So it's going to be in B tier, right? Next to Combat Slam and Heavy Blow. These orbiting hammers deal quite a lot of damage, and they don't block projectiles or anything that I've noticed. However, they can deal damage to enemies while they're orbiting you, right? If an enemy gets too close, it will deal damage to them. And then when you third attack, they'll launch them forward, which is quite nice. So you can't control where they go, more so what I'm getting at here. Overall, I do think Battle Rhythm is quite strong. I just personally take Safeguard over it. So Battle Rhythm's going to be B tier and Safeguard's going to be A tier, right? The next weapon mod and the last weapon mod for the Rift Hammer is Detonate. Whenever you defeat a stunned enemy, it explodes. Whenever you defeat a stunned enemy, it explodes. Very interesting concept, but I don't care. I really don't care for it. I think I've gotten use out of it like once or twice. I don't think it's good enough at all. It's really bad, I'm not gonna lie. It's so bad. And the ultimate mod, Overcharge, for the Rift Hammer is really strong again. Your weapon attacks can be charged longer to become overcharged, getting 75% increased damage. Instantly S tier. It's so good. There's no downside, right? And you basically only have to charge your weapon for an extra second, and then they become overcharged, and then deal the 75% increased damage, which is really, really strong. Yeah, okay. I like where all these weapon mods are sitting. Let's quickly go over them. The final placements for the weapon mods for Rift Hammer goes like this. In S tier, we have Volcanic Rift and the ultimate mod, Overcharge. In A tier, we have Defensive Stance and Safeguard. In B tier, we have Battle Rhythm, Combat Slam, and Heavy Blow. In C tier, we have Unstable Rift and Knockout. And in D tier, there's nothing. And in F tier, we have Detonate. As we move on to the most controversial weapon, by far, personally, I want to put it here. I really do. And there's no reason for it other than out of spite, really. So I'm gonna, be real and throw it where I think it belongs, which is in B tier. All these weapons are quite strong, I'm not gonna lie. Razorwind has its benefits and has its downsides, although the downsides don't seem that, down. It's just their weapon mods aren't as good or as crazy as the other weapons. That's the only reason why I'm pretty sure it's in B tier, or where I would put it as B tier at least. Razorwind's weapon mods are all pretty mediocre in my opinion, but what will start us off is Dual Strike. Dual Strike is the first weapon mod in the first row, and it's your third attack hits twice. Honestly, not the worst. Not the worst, but I'm just going to throw it in C tier for now because I don't really see a reason for that. So, yeah, Dual Strike, C tier. I'm just going to leave it there for now. The next one in the first row in the second slot is Livewire. Your third attack releases Chain Lightning that seeks other enemies. I'm going to throw in B tier because I do think having Lightning in your build makes the build better than just, the attack hitting twice. Obviously, they're kind of the same thing, but Chain Lightning then puts you in the Lightning pool, and then you can find Lightning Relics more easily, and it's just another, instance of Lightning, which is quite strong in my opinion. All right, the last weapon mod in the first row is Hefty. Your third attack deals additional AoE damage. I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm sure it's good. It's just, I don't like this weapon mod. I don't know why. I just don't like it. It's realistically not that bad. It's just, I would much rather have Livewire or Dual Strike over it. That's why I'm throwing it in D tier. Starting us off in the second row, first slots, is Proficiency. Whenever your charge attack hits an enemy, its damage is temporarily increased by 20%, max of 5 stacks, so it can maximum do 100% increased damage. This I thought was really good at one point, but I've soon realized that it is not as good as I think it is. So I'm going to throw it in C tier for now. It might move around, but I don't think so. It seems good at first glance. You're like, wow, increased damage. Wait, that's kind of cracked. It doesn't really do that much from what I've seen, and there's better mods. The next one in the second row is Persistence. Your third attack leaves a projectile. I don't like this. It's arguably the worst one. This is not objective, I don't think, but I personally do not like it at all. Once again, it's the same thing as Hefty. I just don't like that mod, so we're going to throw that in F tier. I personally would not use it. Just me. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I don't know. Personally, I don't like it, so it's F tier. The last weapon mod in the second row is Precision. Your charge attack tipper hits twice. This is really good. This is really, really good. So the tipper is the very end hit will hit twice. So when the Razorwind, goes forward, it'll hit its peak range, and then it'll start to come back. And just before it hits its peak range, right, that next hit is the tipper. That next hit will be the tipper, and if that hits twice, you're dealing the most damage possible, pretty much, because you want to charge your Razorwind just enough so that the Razorwind reaches the enemy, hits the enemy, and comes back. But you don't want to, throw it past the enemy and let it come back and hit the enemy. You want it to just barely reach the enemy and hit the enemy with a tipper. Starting off, the last row of mods for the Razorwind is Empowered. Whenever you hit an enemy with your charge attack, your next 5 chain attacks become empowered and deal 50% bonus damage. This is quite interesting. It really is quite interesting. It's just, I feel like you're only ever going to charge attack. The chain attacks don't really matter. Maybe it's B tier because it's a good, in-between mod. If you, don't always charge attack and you don't always chain attack, it's a good in-between, right, mod. It benefits both in a way, or you utilize both and it gives you a benefit. Yeah, maybe it's just B tier, right? I haven't used this weapon mod enough to really have a good understanding of it, but that's my thought process. That's, what I think. I think it's just going to be good enough, which is kind of B tier. Now, the second slots on the bottom row for weapon mods is Serrated. Your charge attack marks enemies, increasing damage dealt to them. It's really good. It is really, really good. It's actually so good. The increased damage is 20%, and it may not seem like a lot, but if you're playing in co-op, that mark applies to any enemy, or not any enemy, but it applies to that enemy that you've hit, right? Therefore, if any of your teammates hit that enemy that you have marked, they'll also deal increased damage to it, or that boss, right? It's just a great way to give your teammates and you a buff to your damage. Therefore, I really do think it is S tier, and it makes a pretty significant difference in a run, for sure. Now, last weapon mod before we get to the ultimates is your charge attack tipper has a 10% extra crit chance. On the surface, this weapon mod seems good, but I don't think it's enough. I really do not think it's enough crit chance. Now, maybe if it was 25%, it would be, like B tier, maybe A tier, but I think it really is just D tier and like top of D tier because once again, personal vendetta against Hefty. So I think sharpened is top of D tier. I really don't know. And then burgeoning the ultimate mod. Whenever your charge attack hits an enemy, its size increases temporarily. It's pretty cool. It's a cool ultimate mod, but doesn't necessarily do all that much. But it is pretty cool, and once again, no downside. So might as well throw it in S tier, I guess. Even though I don't think it's even S tier. It's probably just A tier. Like increasing size obviously allows you to hit enemies more easily because it's gonna be a bigger projectile. Yeah, okay. I like where these are sitting. Let's quickly go over them once again. So the Razorwind weapon mods are listed as this. So in S tier we have Serrated. In A tier we have Precision and the ultimate mod Burgeoning. In B tier we have Livewire and Empowered. In C tier we have Dual Strike and Proficiency. In D tier we have Sharpened and Hefty. In F tier we have Persistent. Moving on to another fun weapon is the Scythe. The Scythe is quite strong. The Scythe has probably the highest capability to not necessarily catching up, but scaling. Like, the Scythe has an interaction with apples where when you slice them, it'll give you 1 weapon damage. And that's quite significant for the most part. I feel like it is A tier. I think it's better than B, or better than the bow and better than the Razorwind, just slightly. The first weapon mod for the Reaper's Toll, aka Scythe, is Lacerate. Slashed enemies take 10% bonus damage from weapon attack. It's really good. I don't have to really explain too much about Lacerate because as long as you slash enemies quite often, you're just going to deal more damage. So I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. I guess I can explain what a slash is or how you do it. It's basically the Scythe's charge attack, and you get a certain amount of ammo or have a certain amount of ammo capacity, and then you gain ammo through multiple different ways. And then you can use a single charge or multiple charges at once, which will just increase the amount of damage that slash charge does. It's like Scythe's ranged attack, because you just shoot out a projectile pretty much, and when that projectile hits an enemy, then that enemy is slashed. Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. The next weapon mod for the Scythe, which is the top row second slot, is Summoner. Whenever you defeat a slashed enemy, conjure a ghost to seek and damage enemies. It's pretty okay at best. I think the reason why I'm throwing in B tier currently is just because A, you have to defeat an enemy, which isn't really an issue, but the issue is that that enemy that you defeat has to be slashed, which is kind of difficult, and then you conjure ghosts to seek and damage enemies, which is fine, but that ghost does 100% of your weapon damage or blue damage, which is not that much, although it is like a substitute, or not substitute, but a supplementary amount of damage per ghost, right? It's just like not enough to do anything, I guess. I think what I'm trying to get at here is just the fact that Summoner is okay, but not the best. And then the last weapon mod on the top row for weapon mods, for the Scythe that is Hidden Blade. Start with Cloak and Dagger skill. So this allows you to start with a skill, and personally, it's a cool combo to have the Scythe or Reaper's Toll start with Cloak and Dagger, but I don't see it being that practical in a way, so I think it's just going to be in D tier. I don't think I have to explain this too much. I think if you've played the Scythe a lot, I think you would agree with me, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is a underused weapon mod. I don't know. From what I can tell, it's not amazing. I don't personally like it that much, so, throw it in D tier. The next weapon mod is Shroud, which is in the second row, first slot. Whenever you defeat a slashed enemy, become invisible. Now, this works quite well with Hidden Blade, but personally, I don't love this combo. That's why I'm, just keeping it in D tier, because I'm not quite sure how to utilize it to its best case scenario, I guess you'd call it. To explain more about this, it's Shroud, right? Whenever you defeat a slashed enemy, become invisible. With Hidden Blade and Cloak and Dagger, more specifically, when you're invisible, you can use Cloak and Dagger, and it'll do the dagger part instead of the cloak, right? So being invisible allows you to use the dagger skill, or the dagger part of Cloak and Dagger. So it's a good combination, right? Allows you to go invisible more often, and you don't have to have a charge of Cloak and Dagger to go invisible. You'll just be invisible and then use the dagger part. It's pretty cool, but I don't use it enough to make it worth using, and I feel like there's better builds is the issue. Like, it's a cool build, but there's just better builds. Yeah, we're gonna leave those two mods in D tier. Necromancy is also an interesting mod. It's the second mod on the in the second row. It's an interesting one. When you defeat a slashed enemy, summon a wisp. It's interesting. I don't know. I'm very split. I think it's just going to be sitting in C tier for the simple fact that summoning a wisp is okay. It's just the condition in order to utilize it is kind of slightly difficult because you have to slash an enemy and then defeat an enemy, you summon a wisp, and that wisp might be some effects that you don't want. Like maybe it's lightning, right? Lightning's not a terrible wisp, it's just not an effect that you can actually utilize at the time. And since it's just a random wisp, it's not amazing. You don't really have control, and sometimes not having that little bit of control there could screw you up. Hopefully it doesn't, but it could. Once again, it's a cool weapon mod, don't get me wrong. I like it as a mod, but I just don't use it enough. So maybe I just have it underappreciated. I don't know. The last weapon mod in the second row here is Piercing Slash. Slash projectiles pierce through enemies. This is really strong. This can allow a slash charge to hit multiple enemies, right? Which means you can apply the slashed effect to a lot more enemies at once. And it is just another way to get a lot of damage because slash projectiles do deal quite a bit of damage. But if they just, disappear after they hit the first enemy, then you're missing out on a lot of damage. Anyways, yeah, it's a cool mod. I think it is arguably the best mod in the second row. I think I'm always running Piercing Slash over any of the other ones. Moving on to the last row of mods for the Reaper's Toll or Scythe is Refill. Whenever you use a skill, gain ammo. Now, ammo is what you use to use your slash charge. I guess ammo and slash charges are the same thing. It's okay. You have to use it for one of the weapon trials. I just don't think anybody actually uses it. However, it is a skill meta, so like maybe, I don't know. I don't use it. I don't think anybody I've talked to use it. It's just it's not enough. It doesn't do enough for you. And then the best weapon mod on the bottom row is Split Slash. Cast multiple slash projectiles simultaneously. This is really, really good. It allows you to like shotgun enemies in a way. So it's quite nice. Alright, the last mod for Reaper's Toll, or Scythe, is Phantasm. Your slash projectiles conjure ghosts when fired. This is super interesting and cool. I don't see a perfect use for it, I guess. Getting a ghost build together doesn't really do too much. It's very cool and interesting, but it's not significant enough, I don't think. Now, the ghosts do deal 100% of your blue damage as well. It's the same as the other weapon mod, Summoner. Yeah, look, Phantasm and Summoner are on the same row. I just instinctively did that. I didn't even realize that, but they're on the same row. And it's part of the same build pretty much, right? Like if you're going a ghost build, you might as well run both of these weapon mods. And they're good, but not insane, especially in the current meta. It looks good. I think this list is going great. And then the ultimate mod, Reserve, getting additional ammo. So instead of having 3 max charges for your slash attack, you'll have 4, which is quite significant. It's an extra 33% ammo. Like it's pretty good, right? Overall, I think these are sitting in the right spots for me personally. So yeah, let's go over it. Reaper's Toll / Scythe. The weapon mods tier list looks like this. In S tier, we have Split Slash and the Ultimates mod Reserve. In A tier, we have Lacerate and Piercing Slash. In B tier, we have Phantasm and Summoner. In C tier, we have Necromancy. In D tier, we have Shroud and Hidden Blade. And in F tier, we have Refill. Alright, moving on to the very last weapon is Voidman. As much as I want to throw it in like F tier, just because, once again, this is personal bias, absolutely here. I don't like it. I really don't like it. There's something about Void Mantle that feels wrong. I've had like 1 build, maybe 2 builds where I used Void Mantle that was actually fun. Every other time I use it, it's just a miserable experience for me. Obviously, your opinions could be very different. Yeah, I think it's D tier. It's just not my favorite weapon at all. You have reduced move speed, although that's the same thing with Hammer, and Hammer has more reduced move speed. You start with 0% crit, which is absurd. The weapon mods are kind of cool, I'm not gonna lie. However, one row I feel like is pretty useless. Maybe I'll move it at the very end, but I think it's gonna be in D tier. It might move up to C tier, but I think it's gonna sit in D tier. Void Mantle's just not my favorite. Void Mantle's first weapon mod, which is the top row for Slut, is Orb Burst. Your third attack shoots 2 additional orbs. This is kind of strong. If you're doing a weapon build, this is kind of strong. Every third attack, you just shoot up 2 more orbs, which is good damage. Very good damage. I'm going to throw in A tier for now. You know, things can move as we set up the list, but A tier. The next weapon mod is Orb Weaver, which is top row, second slot. Your chain attacks have Seeking. This is another one that's really good. They're really just on par with each other. It's really like, I'll choose whichever one I'm feeling that day, to be honest. Like, I don't think one is better than the other. They're pretty on par. It's just one has, infinite range pretty much, and the other one has way more damage. You're kind of just trading off range for damage or damage for range. It makes a lot of sense that they're on the same tier. So I'm in A tier, right? The last weapon mod on the top row is Laser Focus. Your charge attack is a laser beam. I'm just going to drop it in D tier because realistically, I don't think it's good enough. I really don't. I've used it a couple times. Now, obviously, I don't have enough experience to really talk about this. However, from what I have seen and what I have experienced, it's not fun. Plus, it's in the same row as Orb Burst and Orb Weaver. Like, you're never going to take a laser focus over Orb Burst or Orb Weaver, I don't think. As we move on to the second row of mods for Void Mantle here, it's the Dark Spell row for weapon mods. First one is Dark Star, a dark spell that creates a black hole and casts a meteor. It's okay. It is okay. I'm gonna throw in C tier just because the other ones are better and a lot better at that. Let's move on to the next dark spell, which is the second row, second slot's weapon mod. Dark spell Celestial Air. A dark spell that instantly kills a non-boss enemy. So basically what this does is it'll select an enemy and then that enemy will get pulled through a tear and be gone. Instantly killed. It's quite strong. I do think it's the pinnacle of B tier. Like it's strong, but not over strong or overpowered. It's just you use it once and then you have to wait another like 5-6 seconds before you can use it again. It's definitely a balanced dark spell. Now the next one, Dark Spell Darkening, which is the last weapon mod in the second row. A dark spell that summons 2 lightning bolts that damage enemies. Now this is lightning bolts, which means it has lightning damage. So you can scale it with lightning as well as skill damage. Once again, you can scale your dark spells with skill damage. I do think Dark Spell Darkening is awfully strong here. So I'm going to throw it in top of A tier. It's better than Celestial Tear because you can kind of control this more, I feel like. And you can also hit bosses with this. I'm going to leave it at that. In the last row of weapon mods for Void Mantle, there is Ghostly Image is the first one. Whenever you dodge, summon a dark clone to attack nearby enemies. It's okay. It's better than Laser Focus, but I don't love it. I don't use it very often either. Maybe it's just like an experience issue. Yeah, let's just move on past that because I really I don't know too much about Ghostly Image. Phantom Pulse is the next one. Whenever you dodge, summon a dark clone that deals AoE damage around it. This one's kind of interesting. I feel like it's also B tier. Because whenever you dodge, right, you summon a dark clone. There is a cooldown on this dark clone, by the way. However, AoE damage is always nice. I think it's 3 pulses. But then this last one here, this last weapon mod for Void Mantle is Grim Duality. Whenever you dodge, summon a dark clone that when defeated casts a dark spell. So you can get another dark spell proc, and it's just a random one. It's not the one that you're using or anything. It's just a random dark spell. However, it is still strong because being able to cast another dark spell is always strong, always good. And then the ultimate mod for Void Mantle is Void Field. Your dark spells have a 5% chance to instantly kill all non-boss enemies. So you can instantly clear a room by just casting a dark spell every 20 attempts, I guess, because 5% chance, right? So S tier, once again, no downside. Obviously, you can't kill bosses, so that's the downside, but it's still really, really strong. By me saying you can't kill bosses, that's just this specific effect that instantly kills all the enemies in the room. Just can't kill bosses because that'd be really broken. Anyways, I like where these sit, so we're just gonna go over, the weapon mods list for Void Mantle, which is S tier has Void Field, the ultimate mod. A tier has Dark Spell Darkening, Orb Burst, Orb Weaver, and Grim Duality. In B tier, we have Dark Spell Celestial Tear and Phantom Pulse. In C tier, we have Dark Spell Dark Star and Ghostly Image. In D tier, we have Laser Focus and nothing in F tier. Overall, I think most of the weapons are pretty viable. It's just the current best is Staff. It's by a long shot. Honestly, I feel like I should just move these down. Move all of these down, and it should just be like this. Maybe this is better too. I think Scythe is slightly better, though not really. No, I'm gonna move it back to this. So I think this is the exact tier list that I would present to you guys, which is an S tier Nexal Staff, right? It's the pinnacle. It is the best weapon currently, including the weapon mods. It's just the best, right? Especially in this meta of skills. Nothing in A tier because there's just such a big gap between Nexal Staff and the other weapons. In B tier, we have the Rift Hammer, and then the Ember Blade, and then Scythe or Reaper's Toll. And then in C tier, we have Guardian Bow and Razorwind. In D tier, we have Void Mantle, and nothing in F tier. I think this is a pretty good list. Now, obviously, once again, just to reiterate over everything, this is all my opinion. It's not necessarily objective, but there's probably some objective truth in this. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope something has given you some new light on some weapon mods and maybe change your opinion on others. Overall, once again, I just like to say thank you guys for watching, because if you did get this far, that's a lot of time to spend learning weapon mods or things like that, right? Obviously, I'm pretty sure this is going to be not necessarily entertaining, but very informational based. If you've made it this far, you're probably a small percentage of viewers. And if you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to be making one more tier list before 2.0, and then when 2.0 releases, I'm going to have to make these tier lists all over again. And if you do want to create your own tier list, I have some of the tier lists that I've created on Tier Maker or Tier List Maker, right? And then I think I also have some of them as templates, so you can just take it, try it, or by try it, I mean like use the templates and make your own tier list, and you can show off them. If I remember, I'll have it pinned, or not pinned, but in the description, the tier list maker templates. I'll put them in the description. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, have a good rest of your evening, whatever time you're viewing this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, I guess.